If the previous chapter showcased David's grace to someone who didn't expect it, this chapter showcases David's grace to someone who does not deserve it. In the course of time, the king of the Ammonites died, and his son Hanun succeeded him as king. David thought, "I will show kindness to Hanun, son of Nahash, just as his father showed kindness to me." David is obsessed with showing kindness at the moment, isn't he? And what a great obsession to have, I suppose. We're not showed when this kindness occurred towards him from Nahash, but evidently David was on the receiving end of kindness, and hearing now that this man has died, David says that he wants to show sympathy to his son who has now taken the throne as he grieves the loss of his father. And so David sent a delegation to express his sympathy to Hanun concerning his father. However, when the envoy from David arrived, there was no warm welcome for them. The king, in his defense, receives some terrible advice here. We read verse 3, "The Ammonite commanders said to Hanun, their lord, 'Do you think David is honoring your father by sending envoys to you to express sympathy? Hasn't David sent them to you only to explore the city and spy it out and overthrow it?' Well, the answer is no. That was not David's purpose or his plan. We read it in the earlier verses. This was a genuine expression of kindness motivated by the bigness of his own heart. If David wanted to march against them in battle, he would have done so, and he wouldn't need to send a delegation of spies. We've seen David's military victories in recent chapters. The Lord is giving him these victories, so he does not need to rely on trickery like this. Still, see how the messengers are treated. Hanun seized David's envoys, shaved off half of each man's beard, cut off their garments at the buttocks, and sent them away. Now that is every bit as embarrassing as it sounds. It is meant to be. They are trying to humiliate these men. By the way, this seems to be a bit of a calling card for the Ammonites. Like the previous interaction with the men of Jabesh Gilead, where they threatened to pluck out one eye from each person and bring shame on all Israel, their intention here is to cause shame and humiliation. This is like psychological warfare. David was told about what had happened. No idea who told him. And perhaps one of the messengers managed to turn his cut robe into a pair of shorts and get back into Jerusalem. Either way, someone gets the message to David that the men have now got half-shaved beards and half-length robes. David says, "Stay at Jericho till your beards have grown, and then come back." Presumably, he also sends robes to them. Evidently, the beard thing is a big deal in their culture, and a lack of beard is associated with a lack of manliness. The Ammonites realize that they've become obnoxious now to David. That idea of realizing something doesn't always mean that the penny dropped, that the fact dawned on them. No, they knew they were making themselves obnoxious. The reality is that they've now realized what the consequences will be. That David, a military expert who has been given all this land by God and has every reason to take it, they realize that David has been insulted by us when all he tried to do was show kindness to us. They realize the consequences of their actions, and they geared up for war. Evidently, they're not feeling too confident in themselves, and so they hire the armies of surrounding nations to come and fight with them, and so they are helped by 33,000 other soldiers. The thing continues to escalate. David, we're not told if he was going to attack, but David hears that they've now gathered an army and they're there on his eastern border. And so he brings his army to face off against them. As they make their plans, Joab gives this beautiful speech. Verse 12. "Be strong and let us fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God." Do you see? He takes very seriously the idea of man's responsibility. We've got work to do. We have got to fight. We have got to give this everything we have. And, with barely a breath between these two sentences, the Lord will do what is good in his sight. What does that mean? Joab is trusting in God's sovereignty. You know, I love how the Bible will not let us inflate one of these doctrines to the detriment of the other. Both are held together. Man's responsibility, God's total sovereignty. We will fight for our lives, Joab says, and the battle belongs to the Lord. So the Arameans see the Israelites advancing against them and they flee. Such is the fear that grips their hearts, and understandably so. That might well be the wise thing to do. Run from the army that has God on their side. Unfortunately, in verse 15, we read that they regroup. And so David's army does the same, and at last they actually fight. The Arameans try and flee again, but this time David is successful in catching many of them and forcing many of them into battle, which the Israelites win, expectedly and decisively. Why did they win? 2 reasons, and they're both true. They won because they fought. They would not have won the battle if they did not bother to march out against the enemy, pick up their swords, and fight. The other reason, why did they win? Because the battle belongs to the Lord and is given to his people as a gift. Both of those things are true, and we can spend our lives being confused by it, or we can relax and be comforted by it. Your job as a Christian, work as best you can with all you have, and trust that the battle belongs to the Lord.